The mountain air at 7,000 feet carried a crispness that felt like absolution. Lake Ashwood, nestled in the Sierra Nevada like a sapphire set in granite, reflected the powder blue sky with such perfect clarity that the boundary between heaven and earth seemed to dissolve. It was the kind of place where a man could forget, if only for a moment, the weight of the things he'd seen and done in darker corners of the world. Commander Ryan McKenna sat on the weathered dock of his late grandfather's cabin, his bare feet dangling inches above the mirror-smooth water. At 34, he carried himself with the coiled stillness of a rattlesnake at rest, calm on the surface, but ready to strike with lethal precision if the moment demanded it. His dark hair, cut with military precision, was just beginning to show threads of silver at the temples, souvenirs from a decade of night raids and close calls that had turned boys into ghosts and survivors into legends. He wore faded jeans and a thermal Henley that did little to conceal the lean, hardened muscle beneath. The physique of a man who had carried 80-pound packs through Hindu Kush mountains and breached doors in Fallujah while most people his age were deciding what to order for lunch. His hands, calloused and scarred, rested easy on his knees, but his eyes, steel gray and perpetually scanning, never truly rested. Even here, in this postcard of peace, they tracked the flight of an osprey across the water, noted the ripple of a trout breaking the surface, cataloged the distant rumble of a truck on the fire road. 12 years as a Navy SEAL had rewired his brain. Threat assessment was no longer a skill. It was a reflex, as automatic as breathing. Beside him, lying in a patch of morning sun that warmed the old dock planks, was the reason Ryan had survived those 12 years with his sanity relatively intact. Titan was a Belgian Malinois, 90 pounds of muscle, intelligence, and unshakable loyalty wrapped in a coat of fawn and black. His ears, large and alert, swiveled like radar dishes, constantly monitoring the world even as he rested his scarred muzzle on his front paws. Titan wasn't just a dog. He was a brother in arms, a fellow operator who had cleared buildings in Ramadi, sniffed out IEDs in Kandahar, and once taken a bullet meant for Ryan during an extraction gone sideways in Yemen. The puckered scar on the dog's shoulder, hidden beneath his thick coat, was a twin to the one Ryan carried on his ribs, matching wounds from the same firefight, physical proof of a bond forged in fire. "Think the fish are biting today, boy?" Ryan asked, his voice rough from disuse. He'd been at the cabin for 4 days and had spoken fewer than 100 words total. The silence was medicine. Titan's tail gave a single, heavy thump against the dock. His amber eyes opened briefly, regarding Ryan with that steady, knowing gaze that sometimes felt uncomfortably human, then closed again. The dog's message was clear. "I don't care about fish. I care that you're here, safe and not bleeding." Ryan allowed himself a rare smile, reaching over to scratch behind Titan's ears in the spot that made the big dog's back leg twitch involuntarily. "Yeah, I know. We earned this, didn't we?" The leave was mandatory. 3 weeks of forced decompression after a mission that had gone so far off the rails that the after-action report was still classified above Ryan's own security clearance. He'd come home with all his fingers and toes, which was more than could be said for 2 members of his team. The Navy's psychologist had used words like acute stress reaction and combat fatigue. But Ryan knew the truth was simpler and uglier. He was tired. Tired of watching friends die. Tired of making calls that traded lives like currency. Tired of being the last man standing. The cabin had been his refuge as a boy, a place where his grandfather, a Marine who'd seen his own share of horror in Vietnam, had taught him to fish, to track deer, to read the forest like a book. The old man had understood the particular silence that lived in warriors, and he'd offered his grandson the one thing the VA couldn't provide, a place where that silence was welcome, even sacred. Ryan checked his watch. 0847 hours. The diner in town opened at 600, and he'd promised himself a proper breakfast after 4 days of canned soup and instant coffee. The thought of eggs, bacon, and coffee that didn't taste like battery acid was enough to finally pull him to his feet. Come on, Titan, let's get some real food. The dog was up in one fluid motion, his body language shifting subtly from rest mode to ready mode. Even on leave, even in the mountains far from any battlefield, Titan never fully powered down. It was what made him an exceptional working dog, and what made him such a perfect companion for a man who couldn't quite turn off either. The Timberline Diner occupied a converted logging office at the edge of Lake Ashwood's tiny downtown, a generous term for the 3-block stretch of weathered storefronts that serviced a year-round population of 800 souls. The building wore its history in the axe marks still visible on its hand-hewn beams, and the black and white photographs covering the walls. Grim-faced loggers standing beside fallen giants, sawmills belching smoke, and teamsters guiding horse-drawn timber sleds through snow. The smell hit Ryan the moment he opened the door. Bacon grease, fresh coffee, and warm maple syrup, a holy trinity that made his mouth water and his stomach growl. It was 09:15 on a Thursday morning, and the place was nearly full. Local contractors in Carhartt jackets occupied the counter, while retirees claimed the window booths, nursing coffee and trading the previous night's card game stories. Behind the counter, moving with the efficient grace of a dancer who'd memorized every step of a complex routine, was Lily Chen. At 28, she had the kind of delicate beauty that seemed at odds with the rough-hewn mountain town, porcelain skin, dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail, and expressive brown eyes that missed nothing. She wore the diner's standard uniform of jeans, a white button-up with Timberline embroidered over the pocket, and a red apron tied at her waist, but she moved through the space like she owned it, because, in a way, she did. "Morning, Frank," she called to an old-timer at the counter, topping off his mug without being asked. "How's that knee?" "Still attached, which is more than my doctor expected," Frank grumbled, but his weathered face creased into a smile. "You're a saint, Lily girl." Ryan took a booth in the corner, an old habit, always sit where you can see the exits, and watched her work. She moved from table to table with practiced efficiency, but there was something in her eyes that caught his attention, a hypervigilance he recognized from his own mirror. She wasn't just working. She was scanning, assessing, staying aware of every person in the room with an intensity that spoke of experience with danger. When she finally made her way to his table, her smile was warm, but her eyes did a quick tactical assessment of their own. Clean, well-built, sitting with his back to the wall, watching the door. Military or cop, her expression said, and not the dangerous kind. "Mornin'," she said, pulling her order pad from her apron. "What can I get you?" "Coffee, black, then I'll need a minute with the menu." Ryan's voice was quiet, respectful. Up close, he could see the faint shadows under her eyes that spoke of too many double shifts and not enough sleep. "Coming right up." She paused, glancing toward the door where Titan sat patiently just outside, his massive head visible through the glass. "That your dog? He's gorgeous." "That's Titan. He's a working dog, retired military. Is he all right out there?" Lily's expression softened in a way that transformed her face, revealing the genuine warmth beneath the professional efficiency. "Honey, bring him in. We're not fancy here, and it's cold this morning. He can sit by your booth." Ryan felt something unknot in his chest. In the 12 years since he'd joined the teams, he'd learned to read people with the same precision he used to read terrain and threat patterns. Lily Chen was kind, genuinely, deeply kind, the sort of person who noticed the small sufferings of the world and tried to ease them when she could. He whistled softly, and Titan trotted inside, his nails clicking on the worn linoleum. The dog immediately positioned himself beside the booth, sitting at attention, his intelligent eyes sweeping the room once before settling on Ryan, awaiting his next command. "He's so well behaved," Lily said, already pouring Ryan's coffee. "Military working dog?" "Yes, ma'am. Explosives detection. We did 3 tours together." "Thank you for your service," she said simply, and Ryan could tell she meant it, not the rote patriotism people offered, like Tic Tacs, but genuine gratitude. "Both of you?" As she walked away to greet new customers, Ryan found himself watching her again, but this time with concern rather than casual interest. The way she positioned herself when taking orders from the 2 men in the corner booth, angled so she could see both the exit and the kitchen. The way her smile never quite reached her eyes when they joked with her, the way her hand trembled, almost imperceptibly, when she poured their water. Those men were wrong. Ryan's gut, honed by 1,000 patrols in hostile territory, told him so with absolute certainty. They wore expensive hiking gear that was too clean, too new. Their hands were soft, uncalloused, and the way they looked at Lily, tracked her movements, whispered to each other when she turned away. It wasn't the appreciative glance of men admiring a pretty waitress. It was predatory, calculating. Ryan's hand moved unconsciously to Titan's head, his fingers finding the reassuring warmth of the dog's fur. Titan sensed the shift in his handler's tension and pressed closer, a low, subaudible rumble vibrating in his chest. Not quite a growl, but a warning that he was on alert. "Easy, boy," Ryan murmured, "just watching." But he was more than watching. He was cataloging, the bulge under the left man's jacket that could be a concealed weapon, the way the right man kept checking his phone and glancing at the door, the brand-new SUV with tinted windows parked directly in front of the diner's entrance, blocking the most direct escape route. These weren't hikers. These were hunters. And unless Ryan was very much mistaken, Lily Chen was their prey. The 2 men in the corner booth radiated wrongness the way a corpse radiates decay, subtle at first, but unmistakable once you noticed it. Ryan had spent enough time in the world's dark places to recognize predators when he saw them, and these men were apex predators trying very hard to blend into the peaceful mountain morning. The older of the 2 was maybe 45, with silver threading through his dark hair and the kind of lean, weathered face that suggested Slavic or Eastern European ancestry. He wore a black North Face jacket over a tactical gray shirt, and his hands, clasped around a coffee cup he hadn't actually drunk from, were the hands of a man who worked with them, but not in carpentry or honest labor. The knuckles were thick and scarred, the kind of damage that came from hitting people repeatedly and professionally. His companion was younger, maybe 30, with the thick neck and sloped shoulders of a gym rat who'd discovered steroids before developing good judgment. He kept his hands below the table, fiddling with something in his lap, probably his phone, but Ryan's instincts suggested otherwise. A weapon. He was psyching himself up, running through scenarios, preparing for violence. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment, telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. They'd been there when Ryan arrived, nursing coffee and barely touching the food they'd ordered, always a red flag. No one came to a diner and didn't eat unless they had other business on their mind. Lily returned with Ryan's breakfast, a short stack, scrambled eggs and bacon that smelled like heaven, and he caught her wrist gently as she set down the plate. "Those two," he said quietly, tilting his head fractionally toward the corner booth. "They friends of yours?" The color drained from her face so quickly that Ryan thought she might faint. She steadied herself against the table, her free hand gripping the edge hard enough that her knuckles went white. They're just customers," she said, but her voice shook, and her eyes darted toward the kitchen like she was calculating whether she could make it there before they could cut her off. "Lily." Ryan's voice was calm, steady, the same tone he used to talk spooked civilians out of getting themselves killed in combat zones. "I don't know what's happening, but I know men like that, and I know when someone's in danger. Talk to me." For a moment, she wavered on the knife's edge between trust and terror. Then the door chimed, and a new customer entered, a burly man in a sheriff's department uniform, his duty belt creaking as he walked to the counter. Relief flooded Lily's face. "Deputy Morrison," she called, her voice artificially bright. "Coffee?" "You know it, Lily," the deputy said, settling onto a stool. He was in his 50s, with the comfortable bulk of a man who'd spent more years behind a desk than in the field, but his presence alone seemed to ease the tension in the room. The two men in the corner exchanged a glance. The older one dropped a 20 on the table, far too much for 2 coffees and a half-eaten basket of fries, and they stood in unison, moving toward the exit with the synchronized efficiency of men who'd worked together before. As they passed Ryan's booth, the older man's eyes flicked to him, then to Titan. For just a heartbeat, their gazes locked, and Ryan saw recognition there, not of him specifically, but of what he was. Professional courtesy between predators, acknowledging each other across the savannah. Then they were gone, and the SUV pulled away from the curb, tinted windows hiding its occupants as it disappeared down Main Street toward the Lake Road. Deputy Morrison was oblivious, accepting his coffee and launching into a story about a black bear getting into Mrs. Patterson's trash cans for the 3rd time this week. The other customers laughed and offered suggestions. Life in the Timberline diner returned to its comfortable rhythm, but Lily stood frozen, the coffee pot trembling in her hand, staring at the empty corner booth like it had just birthed a nightmare. Ryan waited until she'd refilled the deputy's cup and escaped to the kitchen before he stood, dropped a 50 on the table to cover his untouched breakfast and a generous tip, and followed her. He found her in the alley behind the diner, leaning against the brick wall, arms wrapped around herself, shaking. She wasn't crying. Her eyes were dry and fierce, but her whole body vibrated with suppressed terror and rage. "They're not coming back for the view," Ryan said quietly, announcing his presence so he wouldn't startle her. Titan pressed against his leg, sensing the distress radiating from the woman. Lily's laugh was bitter, broken. "No, they're not. Who are they?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, taking in the military bearing, the watchful eyes, the way he'd positioned himself between her and the mouth of the alley without conscious thought. "You really, military?" she asked. "Navy SEAL, Commander Ryan McKenna, and this is Titan. He's saved my life more times than I've saved his, which is saying something." She nodded slowly, making a decision. 6 months ago, I testified against Victor Sokolov. He is, the head of a human trafficking ring that operated out of Sacramento. They brought girls in from Southeast Asia, promised them jobs, then enslaved them. I was working at a club where they kept some of the girls. I saw things. I went to the FBI. Ryan felt cold fury crystallizing in his gut. "And those two?" Victor's men. The trial ended 3 weeks ago. He got 15 years in federal prison, but his organization is still operational. His brother, Dimitri, runs it now. And Dimitri doesn't forgive. Her voice was hollow, scraped raw. The FBI put me in witness protection, gave me a new identity, relocated me here. They said I'd be safe, that no one would find me in a tiny town in the middle of nowhere. But someone did. Someone always does. She pushed off from the wall, her spine straightening with visible effort. That warrior resilience Ryan recognized from his own reflection. I knew. It was too good to last. Dimitri has resources, money, people everywhere, and he wants to make an example of me, to show anyone else who might think about testifying what happens when you cross the Sokolovs. Are you armed? She shook her head. The FBI took my gun when I entered the program, said I didn't need it anymore, that they'd handle my security. Her laugh was sharp as broken glass. Obviously, that worked out great. Ryan's mind was already moving through scenarios, running calculations, assessing threat levels. 2 known hostiles, likely more. Unknown timeline until they made their move. 1 civilian to protect with 0 defensive capability. 1 SEAL, technically on leave and without any official authority or backup. 1 retired military working dog with combat experience. Bad odds, but he'd worked with worse. You have anywhere safe you can go? Family? Friends? My parents are dead. I don't have siblings, and I can't involve anyone from town in this. I won't paint targets on innocent people. She met his eyes, and he saw the steel beneath the fear. I've been saving money. I was going to run in another month, disappear somewhere Dimitri couldn't find me. Mexico, maybe, or Canada. You won't make it another month. Those men weren't reconnaissance. They were confirmation. Now that they know where you are, they'll move fast. So, what am I supposed to do? The question wasn't aimed at him specifically. It was the howl of a soul backed into a corner, looking for any escape route that didn't end in death or worse. Ryan was quiet for a long moment, weighing duty against discretion, the mission against the leave, the comfortable fiction that he could ever really walk away from the war. Then he looked down at Titan, who looked back at him with those knowing amber eyes, and he knew the decision had already been made. It had been made the moment Lily's hand had trembled while pouring water for those 2 predators. It had been made when he'd seen the hypervigilance in her eyes and recognized a kindred spirit, someone fighting to survive in a world that wanted to break her. Some battles you chose, some chose you. You're going to let me help you, Ryan said simply, because that's what I do. That's what we do. He gestured to Titan, who sat at attention, ready for orders. We find the bad guys and we stop them. It's not complicated. You don't owe me anything. You don't even know me. I know enough. You stood up when it mattered. You testified. You saved those girls. He met her gaze, steady and sure. Now it's someone else's turn to stand up for you. The call came at 21:47 hours, just as Ryan was securing the cabin for the night. His grandfather's old rotary phone, one of the few anachronisms the place still maintained, jangled with a sound like breaking glass in the quiet mountain evening. Hello? Heavy breathing, ragged and wet. Then Lily's voice, barely a whisper. They're here. Oh, God, Ryan. They're in my apartment. I can hear them breaking down the bedroom door. I locked myself in the bathroom. I don't know how much time The line went dead with a crunch of plastic and splintering wood. Ryan didn't waste time with questions or panic. His body moved with the automatic precision of 1,000 drills, muscle memory kicking in before conscious thought had even finished processing the situation. Titan, work mode. Kit up. The dog was instantly alert, trotting to the corner where Ryan kept his tactical gear, never fully unpacked, even on leave, because operators knew better than to believe peace was permanent. Ryan pulled on his plate carrier, securing the Velcro with practiced efficiency. No time for full combat loadout, but he had the essentials: tac vest, tactical flashlight, his personal sidearm, a Glock 19 with 2 spare magazines, and the combat knife he'd carried through 3 wars. For Titan, there was the working harness, matte, black with reinforced handles, that transformed the dog from pet to tactical asset in seconds. The Malinois stood patiently as Ryan secured it, his entire demeanor shifting from the gentle companion who'd lounged on the dock that morning to the disciplined operator who'd cleared hostile buildings in Fallujah. They were out the door and in Ryan's truck, a battered Ford F-150 that looked like a local's vehicle but had an engine he'd personally rebuilt for performance, in under 90 seconds. The drive into town normally took 15 minutes on the winding mountain roads. Ryan made it in 8, the truck's modified suspension handling the curves like a Formula One car, while Titan braced himself in the passenger seat, claws digging into the upholstery, his ears forward and alert. Lily's apartment was above a closed insurance office on a quiet side street. Ryan killed the engine 2 blocks away, approaching on foot through the shadows, Titan at his heel, moving silent as smoke. Every window in the apartment was dark except one, the bathroom, where a thin line of light showed beneath a door visible from the street. She was still alive, still barricaded. The street was empty, but Ryan's trained eye caught what a civilian would miss. The SUV from the diner parked in the alley across the street, engine still ticking as it cooled. Recent arrival, and more important, a third man sitting in the driver's seat, keeping watch, waiting for his partners to finish the job. Ryan gave Titan the hand signal for watch, and the dog immediately sat, his focus locked on the vehicle, ready to engage if the driver attempted to interfere. Then Ryan moved. The external stairs leading to Lily's apartment were metal and would telegraph his approach with every step, so he bypassed them entirely, using a drain pipe and the building's brick facade to climb to the second-floor landing, silent as a ghost. The front door had been forced, lock broken, frame splintered, and hung ajar, revealing darkness beyond. He could hear them now. Male voices, Eastern European accents, speaking Russian in the casual tones of men confident in their control of the situation. "Stupid girl. You think a door will stop us? We have all night. Dimitri wants her alive. Remember that. Alive, but hurt enough to make the point." The sound of something heavy, a boot maybe, slamming against the bathroom door. Wood cracking. Lily's scream, sharp and terrified, abruptly cut off, as if she'd clapped a hand over her own mouth. Ryan moved through the dark apartment like water flowing through cracks, his movements economical and silent. The layout revealed itself in heartbeats. Small living room, kitchenette, short hallway leading to what had to be the bedroom and bath. 2 men, both armed. He could see the distinctive outline of handguns tucked into waistbands as they stood in the bedroom doorway, focused entirely on breaking through to their prey. They'd made the fatal mistake of assuming they were alone with a helpless victim. The older man, the one from the diner, was driving his shoulder against the bathroom door, which was visibly bowing inward. One more hit, maybe 2, and it would give way. "Step back," the younger one said, drawing his weapon, a Beretta 92, Ryan's tactical mind cataloged automatically. "I'll shoot the lock." Dimitri said, "I don't care what Dimitri said. This is taking too long." He raised the pistol, aiming at the bathroom doorknob. Ryan moved. He crossed the distance between the hallway entrance and the bedroom in 3 strides, silent and lethal, moving through the darkness like it was an old friend. His hand closed over the gunman's wrist just as his finger tightened on the trigger, forcing the barrel up and away. The shot went wild, punching through the ceiling in a deafening crack that filled the small apartment with cordite smoke and ringing silence. Before the younger man could react, Ryan drove his knee into the soft meat of the man's thigh, hitting the femoral nerve cluster with surgical precision. The leg went dead. As the man crumpled, Ryan stripped the Beretta from his grip, reversed it, and brought the butt down hard on the back of his skull, a precisely measured blow designed to render him unconscious without killing him. The man folded like empty clothes, hitting the floor with a meaty thud. The older man had spun at the sound of the gunshot, reaching for his own weapon, but Ryan was already on him. He swept the man's legs, dumping him onto his back, then followed him down with a strike to the throat, controlled, measured, just enough to stun and disable without crushing the trachea. The man gagged, hands flying to his throat, eyes bulging with shock and lack of oxygen. Ryan stripped him of his weapon, another Beretta, this one with a suppressor already attached, because of course they'd planned to kill Lily quietly, and secured both men's weapons in his vest. Then he zip-tied their hands behind their backs with the flex cuffs he always carried, efficient and clinical. The entire engagement had lasted maybe 12 seconds. He moved to the bathroom door and knocked softly. "Lily, it's Ryan. You can come out now." Silence. Then the sound of something scraping, a chair maybe, being moved away from the door. The lock clicked. The door opened a crack, revealing Lily's face, paper white, her eyes huge and dark with terror. "How did you—" she started, then saw the 2 men on the floor, unconscious and bound, and the words died in her throat. "We need to move," Ryan said quietly. "There's a 3rd man in the vehicle outside. He'll have heard the shot. We have maybe 2 minutes before he calls for backup or comes up to investigate. Did you kill them?" "No, but they'll wake up with a hell of a headache and some questions for their boss about how an unarmed witness took them down." He held out his hand. "Come on, trust me." She looked at his hand like it was a lifeline thrown to a drowning swimmer, then took it, her fingers cold and shaking. "Okay, I trust you." They were halfway down the external stairs when Ryan heard the SUV's door open, that distinctive chunk of heavy metal, clear in the night air. The 3rd man had gotten impatient or suspicious, was coming to check on his partners. "Down," Ryan ordered, pressing Lily against the brick wall, shielding her with his body. Below, Titan remained motionless in the shadows, tracking the approaching threat, waiting for Ryan's command. The 3rd man was younger than his companions, maybe 25, with the swagger of someone who'd never really been tested. He walked like he owned the world, hands in his jacket pockets, no tactical awareness at all. He didn't scan his surroundings, didn't check his 6, didn't notice the SEAL operator and retired military working dog watching him from the darkness. He climbed the metal stairs, his footsteps ringing like bells, and disappeared into the apartment. 30 seconds later, his voice echoed out through the broken door. "Yuri! Maxim! What the hell happened? Where is the girl?" Russian. Panicked. The sound of furniture being kicked, followed by the specific, unmistakable sound of a weapon being chambered. Ryan's tactical mind ran the calculations. Hostile is now alerted and armed. Will likely call for backup. Will search the building. Will eventually find us. Or they could take the initiative. He gave Titan the hand signal. Target, subdue, non-lethal. The Malinois shot up the stairs like a missile, a silent blur of muscle and controlled aggression. Ryan heard the man's startled curse, then the hollow thud of 90 pounds of combat-trained dog hitting him at chest height. A scream, the clatter of a weapon hitting the floor, the wet sounds of a struggle. Ryan was moving before the echoes faded, taking the stairs 3 at a time. He found the third man on his back in the Lily's living room, Titan's jaws locked around his right forearm, not breaking bone, but holding with the immovable grip of a tactical vice. The man's weapon, a compact .380, more Saturday night special than professional hardware, lay 3 feet away, kicked there by the dog's initial charge. "Titan, release, guard!" The dog immediately let go, backing up 2 paces but maintaining his position between the man and any possible escape route. His lips were pulled back just enough to show teeth, a low rumble vibrating in his chest, promising swift and terrible consequences if the man tried anything stupid. Ryan secured the third man with zip ties, then hauled all 3 unconscious or stunned hostiles into Lily's bedroom, arranging them in a neat row. He retrieved their phones, smashed them under his boot heel, and pocketed their weapons after clearing them. Only then did he allow himself a moment to look at Lily, who stood in the doorway watching him with an expression caught somewhere between shock and something that looked dangerously close to awe. "You weren't kidding about the SEAL thing," she said, her voice trembling on the edge of hysterical laughter. "No, ma'am." Ryan checked his watch. 21:59 hours. "We need to move. They'll have backup protocols, check-in times. When these 3 don't report in, Dimitri will send more." "Where are we going?" "My cabin. It's remote, defensible, and more importantly, no one knows about it except me." He paused at the door, looking back at the 3 men beginning to stir and groan. "Pack a bag. Essentials only. We leave in 2 minutes." While Lily threw clothes into a backpack with shaking hands, Ryan used the landline in her apartment to call a number he'd hoped never to use on leave, his command's emergency operations line. "Operations, Warrant Officer Chen speaking. This is Commander McKenna, SEAL Team 7, authorization code Delta Foxtrot 729er. I need to report a situation." There was a pause, the sound of typing. "Commander, you're listed as on leave. Are you in danger?" "Negative, but I have a federal witness under immediate threat from organized crime. I've just neutralized 3 hostiles, but more are coming. I need FBI field office contact, immediate extraction, and local law enforcement coordination. Stand by." More typing, faster now. "Sir, what's your location?" Ryan gave the details, crisp and efficient, including descriptions of the 3 men and their vehicle. "I'm relocating the witness to a secure location and will await contact from federal authorities. Do not send local PD. There's reason to believe the target's organization may have compromised local law enforcement." "Understood, sir. Patching you to FBI Sacramento field office now." The conversation with the FBI was shorter but more intense. Special Agent Torres took the information, promised immediate response, and told Ryan in no uncertain terms to keep Lily alive until they could get a protective detail to her location. "Working on it," Ryan replied and hung up. Lily emerged from her bedroom with a backpack and a photograph clutched in her hand. A faded image of a young couple, her parents maybe, smiling in front of a restaurant. She looked at the 3 men on her floor, then at Ryan. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for believing me, for showing up." "It's what I do," Ryan said. "Now let's go before their friends arrive." They exited through the back, Titan ranging ahead to check for threats, and piled into Ryan's truck. As they pulled away, Ryan saw headlights turning onto Lily Street, 2 vehicles moving fast, reinforcements, but they were too late. Their prey was already gone. spirited away by a guardian they'd never seen coming. The drive back to the cabin was tense and silent, except for the truck's engine and Lily's occasional shaky breath. Ryan kept one eye on the rearview mirror, watching for pursuit that never materialized. They'd moved too fast, created too much confusion. Dimitri's men wouldn't know where to look next, but they would look. Men like Dimitri Sokolov didn't accept failure gracefully, and the loss of 3 operatives in a single night would demand escalation. The cabin materialized out of the darkness like a sanctuary, its dark wood frame blending into the surrounding pines, invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. Ryan guided the truck down the overgrown access road and parked it behind the structure, out of sight from any approach. Inside, he lit the propane lanterns, bathing the single large room in warm golden light. The space was spartanly furnished, a bed, a couch, a wood stove, a table, but it was clean and well-maintained, a warrior's refuge. "You'll be safe here," Ryan said, checking the weapon he'd taken from the older Russian, making sure it was unloaded before setting it on the table. "The access road is the only way in, and I'll see anyone coming from half a mile away. There's food in the pantry, water from the well, everything we need." Lily set her backpack down slowly, looking around the cabin with eyes that were struggling to process the last hour. "This is real, isn't it? This is actually happening." "Yes. Those men were going to kill me, or worse." "Yes." She sat down hard on the couch, her legs finally giving out, and buried her face in her hands. For a long moment she was silent, shoulders shaking. When she looked up, her eyes were dry but fierce. "I'm tired of running," she said. "I'm tired of being afraid. I did the right thing, testifying. I saved those girls, and now I'm being hunted like an animal because I dared to stand up to monsters." Ryan knelt in front of her, his presence solid and grounding. "You did do the right thing, and you're not alone anymore. Whatever comes next, we face it together." "Why?" The question was plaintive, confused. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You're supposed to be on leave, recovering. You could walk away." Ryan was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Finally, he said, "I spent 12 years fighting bad guys overseas. Terrorists, warlords, traffickers, men who hurt people because they could, because no one was strong enough to stop them. I came home thinking maybe I'd done enough, earned some peace." He looked down at Titan, who lay at his feet, watching him with those knowing eyes. "But peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's standing between the innocent and the evil. It's saying no further when monsters come calling. You stood up when it mattered. Now it's my turn." Lily reached out and touched his face, her fingers gentle against the weathered skin. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being exactly who you are." Outside, the mountain night stretched vast and dark around them, filled with hidden dangers and the promise of violence to come. But inside the cabin, for just this moment, there was warmth and safety, and the unshakable presence of a warrior who'd decided that this was the hill worth dying on. If you're enjoying this story and believe in standing up for those who can't protect themselves, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our stories. And let me know in the comments, what would you do if you witnessed someone in danger? Your support means everything. Dawn came cold and clear to the Sierra Nevada, painting the sky in shades of pearl and rose gold. Ryan had been awake for hours, sitting on the cabin's porch with Titan at his side, watching the single-access road and running tactical scenarios through his mind. Lily slept fitfully on the couch inside, wrapped in the down comforter Ryan had given her face finally relaxed in unconsciousness. She'd fought sleep for hours, afraid that closing her eyes would make her vulnerable, but exhaustion had finally claimed her around 0300 hours. Ryan had kept watch. It was what he did. At 0647 hours, Titan's ears pricked forward, swiveling toward the distant tree line. A heartbeat later, Ryan heard it too. The low rumble of engines, more than one, approaching from the valley. He moved inside silently, shaking Lily awake with a gentle hand on her shoulder. Her eyes flew open, instantly alert, her body tensing like a trapped animal. "They found us," Ryan said quietly. "Get dressed. We need to move." But even as he said it, he knew they were too late. The engines grew louder, closer, and through the window he saw them. 3 SUVs, black and ominous, churning up the dirt road toward the cabin. They spread out as they approached, taking positions that would cut off any escape route. Professional, military tactics. These weren't street thugs anymore. These were trained operators. "How many?" Lily asked, pulling on her shoes with shaking hands. 3 vehicles, probably 4 men per vehicle. Call it a dozen total. Ryan was already moving, pulling weapons from his bag, checking loads, his movements practiced and efficient. "They'll try to box us in, then breach. Standard tactical entry. 12 men against 1? Against 2, Ryan corrected, gesturing to Titan, who stood at full alert, his hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "And they're expecting a frightened Waitress, not a team that's cleared more buildings than they've had hot meals." He handed Lily one of the Berettas he'd taken the night before, checked to make sure she knew how to handle it. Her grip was awkward but determined. "I took a handgun course," she said, "for the trial, but I've never actually shot at a person." "Hopefully you won't have to," Ryan said. "But if it comes down to them or you aim center mass and you keep pulling the trigger until the threat stops moving. Understand?" She nodded, her face set in grim determination. The SUVs pulled to a stop in a semicircle around the cabin, 50 yards out, far enough to be outside accurate handgun range, close enough to provide suppressing fire. Doors opened in unison, and men spilled out. 12 of them, just as Ryan had predicted, all carrying weapons that ranged from handguns to what looked like a couple of submachine guns. This wasn't a kidnapping anymore. This was a kill squad. A voice echoed across the clearing, amplified by a megaphone. "Lily Chen, you have caused Dimitri Sokolov much trouble. He wishes to speak with you about your testimony. Come out now, and no one else needs to be hurt." The accent was thick, Russian, and the lie was obvious. They weren't here to talk. Ryan positioned himself at the window, using the cabin's log walls for cover. "Stay down," he ordered Lily. "No matter what happens, you stay down and you stay behind me." "What are you going to do?" "My job." He raised his voice, projecting through the broken cabin window. "This is Commander Ryan McKenna, United States Navy SEALs. The woman you're looking for is under federal protection. You're trespassing on private property and threatening a protected witness. I'm authorized to use lethal force to defend her. You have one opportunity to leave before this situation escalates." There was a pause, consultation among the men, then laughter, harsh and disbelieving. "You are one man, Commander Navy SEAL," the voice mocked. "We are 12. Even you cannot win this fight. Give us the girl and you can walk away. You have my word." "The word of a human trafficker means less than nothing," Ryan called back. "Last chance. Leave now." The response was immediate. A burst of automatic weapons fire that shredded the cabin's front windows, sending splinters of glass and wood spraying inward. Lily screamed, covering her head. Titan pressed himself against Ryan's leg, unafraid but alert, waiting for the command to engage. Ryan didn't flinch. He'd been under fire more times than he could count, and this was actually relatively light compared to the ambushes he'd survived in Ramadi. He simply waited for the firing to stop, which it did after about 10 seconds of pointless noise. Suppressors next time, he thought clinically. They're not professional enough. Wrong answer, he muttered and went to work. The cabin his grandfather had built wasn't just a fishing retreat. The old Marine had constructed it with certain contingencies. Hidden in the walls were firing ports, designed to look like knots in the wood, but actually drilled clean through to provide defensive positions. The thick log construction would stop most small arms fire, and beneath the floorboards was something even more useful: his grandfather's personal armory, maintained and updated by Ryan over the years. He pulled up a section of flooring, revealing a waterproof case. Inside, an M4 carbine with optics, extra magazines, smoke grenades, and a claymore mine. The kind of equipment that wasn't exactly legal for civilian possession, but that SEALs tended to keep around, just in case. "Stay here," he told Lily, his voice calm as ice water. "If anyone gets through that door who isn't me or wearing a badge, you shoot them. Don't hesitate. Don't think. Just shoot." "Ryan, trust me," he said, meeting her eyes. "I've done this before." He loaded the M4, checked the optics, and moved to one of the firing ports. Through the small opening, he had a perfect view of the semicircle of vehicles and the men using them for cover. Time to change the calculus. He sighted carefully, picked his target, one of the men with the submachine gun, clearly the biggest threat, and squeezed the trigger. The M4 barked once, and the man dropped, clutching his shoulder, the weapon falling from nerveless fingers. Non-lethal. Disabling. Sending a message. Chaos erupted in the clearing as the men realized they were taking fire from the cabin. They scattered, looking for better cover, their confident assault suddenly looking much less certain. Ryan shifted aim, fired again, another man down, this one taken a round through the thigh. He was aiming for wounds that would hurt like hell but not kill, both for moral reasons and because wounded men required their companions to help them, taking more assets off the board. "Tighten," Ryan commanded. "Out the back. Flank left. Harass." The dog knew what to do. He shot out the cabin's back door like a black and tan missile, disappearing into the tree line. 15 seconds later, Ryan heard shouting from the left side of the clearing, followed by a scream as Titan hit one of the exposed gunmen from behind, taking him down with a precision strike to the arm, disabling his weapon hand. The squad's discipline collapsed. These weren't soldiers. They were criminals used to fighting people who couldn't fight back. The moment they faced coordinated resistance from a trained operator and a combat dog, their tactics fell apart. 2 men broke from cover, trying to flank the cabin from the right. Ryan tracked them through his scope, fired twice more. Both dropped, one clutching his leg, the other his shoulder, still alive, but out of the fight. The voice from the megaphone screamed orders in Russian, trying to rally his men, but panic had already set in. They'd expected an easy kidnapping. They'd found a kill zone. Through his scope, Ryan saw the leader, a thick-set man with Dimitri's same cold eyes, probably a relative, gesturing frantically. The remaining men started falling back toward the vehicles, dragging their wounded with them, abandoning the assault. "Titan, return," Ryan called, and the dog materialized from the woods, unharmed, his tail high with the satisfaction of a job well done. The SUVs roared to life, engines screaming, and tore back down the access road in a spray of gravel and dust. Within 2 minutes, the clearing was empty except for abandoned weapons and blood trails. Ryan kept his rifle trained on the access road for a full minute, making sure it wasn't a feint, before finally lowering the weapon and allowing himself a breath. "Is it over?" Lily asked from behind him, her voice small. "For now," Ryan said, "but they'll be back, probably with more men, better planning." He pulled out his phone, dialing the FBI number Agent Torres had given him. Time to bring in the professionals. The FBI arrived in force 2 hours later. 6 vehicles, including an armored response truck, plus 20 agents in full tactical gear. They swept the area, photographed the evidence, collected the abandoned weapons, and established a security perimeter that turned Ryan's quiet mountain refuge into a military forward operating base. Special Agent Torres turned out to be a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd spent 20 years dealing with the worst humanity had to offer. She listened to Ryan's debrief without interruption, then looked at him with something approaching respect. "You're telling me you held off 12 armed hostiles by yourself?" she asked. 11 by myself, Ryan corrected. Titan took down one of them. He gestured to the Malinois, who sat at attention beside Lily, having appointed himself her personal bodyguard. Torres studied the dog, then Ryan, then the cabin's intact defensive positions. "Commander McKenna, what you did here should be impossible. It's only impossible if you're not properly trained and don't have the right equipment. I had both." He paused. "Plus, they were sloppy. Real operators would have done recon first, identified the defensive positions, and hit us at night with proper coordination. Still, you saved a federal witness and neutralized a major threat." She turned to Lily. "Miss Chen, I owe you an apology. Your protection detail was compromised. We're still figuring out how Dimitri's people located you, but it's clear that the witness protection protocols failed you." "Commander McKenna didn't fail me," Lily said quietly, her hand resting on Titan's head. "He showed up when no one else did." Torres nodded slowly. "Which brings me to my next point. We need to move you again, Miss Chen. New identity, new location, better security." "No," Lily said, her voice steady and firm. Torres blinked. "I'm sorry." "I said no. I'm done running. I'm done hiding. I testified. I told the truth. Victor Sokolov is in prison because of me, and I'm not going to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for Dimitri to find me again." She stood up, her spine straight, her chin lifted. "I want to fight back." "Miss Chen, that's not—" "She's right," Ryan interrupted. "You can't keep her safe. We just proved that. Dimitri has resources, manpower, and he's motivated. He'll find her again, and next time I might not be there." Torres looked between them, her expression caught between frustration and reluctant agreement. "So, what are you suggesting?" Ryan's smile was cold and sharp as a knife's edge. "We stop running. We go on offense. We take the fight to Dimitri." "You're talking about a civilian engaging in vigilante action against organized crime. I'm talking about using Ms. Chen as bait to draw Dimitri into a trap with proper FBI support and oversight." Ryan met Torres's eyes steadily. "You want to shut down the Sokolov operation for good? You want to rescue the other women still trapped in that system? This is how you do it. But it requires courage and trust." Torres was quiet for a long moment, clearly running the idea through her tactical brain, weighing risks against potential gains. Finally, she pulled out her phone. "I need to make some calls. This goes way above my pay grade." She paused at the door, looking back at Ryan. "For what it's worth, Commander, the FBI is lucky you were here." "No," Ryan said, glancing at Lily, who stood tall and unbroken despite everything she'd been through. "I'm the lucky one." While Torres coordinated with her superiors, a medical team checked Lily and Ryan for injuries. The young EMT who examined Lily's wrists, still raw from where she'd sawed at the ropes with the broken shell, now bearing new bruises from her death grip on the bathroom doorframe, shook his head. "You should go to the hospital," he said. "These need proper care." "I'm fine," Lily insisted. "Just bandage them." The EMT looked at Ryan, seeking support, but Ryan just shook his head slightly. He understood her need to stay, to not be separated from the one place that had proven safe. The EMT sighed and applied antiseptic and clean dressings. When the medical team moved on, Ryan sat down beside Lily on the cabin's porch steps. Titan immediately positioned himself between them and the assembled FBI agents, making his loyalties crystal clear. "You don't have to do this," Ryan said quietly. "The bait plan. It's dangerous. There are other ways." "Name one that doesn't involve me running for the rest of my life," Lily challenged. Ryan was silent because they both knew there wasn't one. Dimitri Sokolov had committed too many resources, lost too much face. He would keep coming until Lily was dead or he was stopped permanently. "When I was in Afghanistan," Ryan said slowly, "we had a saying. The only easy day was yesterday. It meant that every morning you woke up, you knew the day ahead was going to be hard. But you got up anyway. You put on your gear, you checked your weapon, and you went out there because that's what needed to be done." He looked at her, this woman who'd shown more courage in 6 months than most people displayed in a lifetime. "You've already had your hard day, Lily. You testified. You survived. No one would blame you for wanting peace now." "Except me," she said softly. "I'd blame me. Those girls in Sacramento, the ones I helped rescue, they're free now because I was brave for one day. But there are more girls, Ryan. More women trapped in Dimitri's system, and they're waiting for someone to be brave enough to help them." She met his eyes, and he saw in hers the same determination he'd seen in every good operator he'd ever served with. The willingness to put yourself at risk for something larger than personal safety. "I'm not a SEAL," she continued. "I'm not a soldier, but I can be brave, if you help me, if you stand with me." Ryan reached out and took her bandaged hand carefully in his. "Always," he said simply. "Whatever comes next, you're not alone." Titan, sensing the moment, placed his big head on Lily's knee, his amber eyes gazing up at her with the uncomplicated devotion that dogs offer the people they've chosen to protect. Lily smiled, the first genuine smile Ryan had seen from her, and scratched behind the dog's ears. "Good boy," she whispered. "You're such a good boy." From inside the cabin, Torres called out, "Commander McKenna, we have authorization. Washington wants to move forward with your plan." Ryan stood, helping Lily to her feet. "You ready?" She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and nodded. "Let's go catch a monster." The plan was elegant in its simplicity, which was exactly what made it so dangerous. Lily would return to the diner, visibly, publicly, sending a message to Dimitri that she was no longer hiding, that she was daring him to come after her again. The difference this time would be the small army of FBI agents, SWAT operators, and one extremely lethal SEAL team commander positioned in overlapping fields of fire around every approach to the town. "You'll be the canary in the coal mine," Torres explained, spreading maps across the cabin's table. "The moment Dimitri or his people show up, we move in. Full tactical response." "And if something goes wrong?" Lily asked. Torres glanced at Ryan, who stood in the corner with his arms crossed, watching the planning session with the critical eye of someone who'd survived more botched operations than successful ones. "If something goes wrong," Ryan said quietly, Titan and I will be inside the diner with you. If anyone gets through the FBI perimeter, they'll have to go through us first." "The dog can't—" One of the SWAT commanders started to object. "The dog has more combat deployments than everyone in this room combined," Ryan interrupted, his voice flat and brooking no argument. "He stays with Ms. Chen, non-negotiable." The SWAT commander looked at Torres, who nodded. "The commander has operational discretion on his asset deployment. If he says the dog stays, the dog stays." They spent 3 hours planning. Entry points, fallback positions, communication protocols, rules of engagement. Ryan contributed tactical insights that came from a decade of real-world operations, gently correcting the FBI's more theoretical approaches with the blunt reality of how plans fell apart under stress. By late afternoon, they had something that looked workable, provided Dimitri took the bait and provided his assault team didn't number more than 20 people. "What if he sends 30?" Lily asked. "What if he brings his whole organization? Then we'll have arrested his entire organization in one operation," Torres said with grim satisfaction. "Either way, we win." Ryan wasn't quite as optimistic, but he kept his concerns to himself. In his experience, operations that looked perfect on paper had a nasty habit of going sideways the moment bullets started flying. That night, before the operation was set to begin, Ryan sat with Lily on the cabin's porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear mountain sky. Titan lay between them, his body warm and solid, a living reminder that they weren't facing this alone. "My grandfather used to bring me up here when I was a kid," Ryan said, breaking the comfortable silence. "After my father died in a car accident, I was angry, confused, didn't understand why bad things happened to good people. What did he tell you? He said the world has wolves and sheep. Most people are sheep. Good, peaceful, just trying to live their lives. The wolves are predators who see that peace as weakness, an opportunity to take what they want." Ryan paused, his hand finding Titan's fur. "But there's a third group, the sheepdogs, the ones who stand between the wolves and the flock, who use violence only to protect, never to harm." "And you're a sheepdog," Lily said softly. "I'm trying to be, not always successfully." He looked at her. "But you are too, Lily. You stood up when others ran. You protected those girls when it would have been safer to stay quiet. That takes a special kind of courage." "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Fear is just data," Ryan said, echoing something his first SEAL instructor had told him years ago. "It tells you that danger is real, but it doesn't tell you what to do about it. That's your choice." She leaned her head against his shoulder, seeking warmth and comfort in the cold mountain night. "Thank you, Ryan, for choosing to help me." "Thank you," he replied, "for giving me a reason to keep fighting." They sat together until the stars filled the sky and Lily finally fell asleep, her head still resting on his shoulder. Ryan stayed awake, keeping watch, Titan pressed against his leg, both of them guardians maintaining their vigil through the night. Tomorrow, the trap would be set. Tomorrow, Dimitri Sokolov would make his move. And tomorrow, one way or another, the hunting would end. The Timberline Diner reopened at 0600 hours sharp, just like always. Lily moved through the familiar space with forced normalcy, pouring coffee and taking orders, her smile bright and her movements practiced. To anyone watching, she was just another small-town waitress starting her morning shift. But the careful observer would notice details, the slight tremor in her hands when she refilled cups, the way her eyes constantly flicked to the windows, the fact that she never turned her back to the door, and they might notice the large Belgian Malinois lying in the corner near the kitchen, his intelligent eyes tracking every person who entered, his posture relaxed but ready to explode into action at a single word from his handler. Ryan sat in the corner booth, the same one he'd occupied on that first morning a week ago, nursing coffee and picking at a breakfast he had no appetite for. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, and a flannel shirt, but beneath the table his hand rested on the Glock in his waistband. His eyes tracked the same patterns as Titan's: entrances, exits, hands, body language. Outside, invisible to the casual eye, the FBI had transformed Lake Ashwood into a fortress. Snipers occupied the rooftops of the buildings flanking the diner. Unmarked vehicles filled with tactical teams sat in parking lots and side streets. Torres herself was positioned in a mobile command center 2 blocks away, monitoring feeds from a dozen hidden cameras. If Dimitri came, they would be ready. The morning passed with excruciating slowness. The usual customers came and went. Frank with his bad knee, Deputy Morrison with his bear stories, contractors arguing about lumber prices. Normal life, blissfully unaware of the trap set in its midst. At 10:47 hours, Titan's ears went up. His head swiveled toward the door 10 seconds before it opened. That preternatural awareness that made working dogs so invaluable in combat. A man entered. Late 30s, Eastern European features, expensive clothes trying too hard to look casual. He took a seat at the counter, directly in Lily's section, and his eyes followed her with predatory focus. Ryan's hand tightened on his weapon. Through his earpiece, a small flesh-colored unit Torres had given him, he heard her voice. "We have visual on possible hostile. Tracking. All units stand by." The man ordered coffee. Lily poured it with shaking hands, her fear genuine and visible. The man smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. "You are very brave," he said in accented English, "coming back here after what happened." "I don't know what you mean," Lily said, her voice barely steady. "I think you do. Dimitri Sokolov wishes to speak with you. He has a proposition." "I'm not interested in anything Dimitri has to say." The man's smile widened. "You misunderstand. This is not a request." He reached into his jacket. Ryan was moving before conscious thought, crossing the diner in 3 strides, his weapon drawn and trained on the man's center mass. Hands on the counter. "Now." The man froze, his hand still inside his jacket, his eyes widening as he registered the threat. Slowly, carefully, he withdrew his hand, holding not a weapon but a cell phone. "I am making phone call," he said carefully. "Is this illegal in America?" "Depends who you're calling," Ryan said, his voice ice cold. Through his earpiece, he heard Torres. "Hold position. We're tracking the phone. Keep him talking." The man's eyes flicked to Titan, who had risen from his corner position and was now standing between the stranger and Lily. His lips pulled back just enough to show teeth, a low growl vibrating through his chest. "Big dog," the man observed. "Dangerous dog. Perhaps you should control him before someone gets hurt." "He's perfectly controlled," Ryan said, "as long as you do exactly what I tell you." Put the phone on the counter. Slowly. The man complied, his movements careful, his body language shifting from predatory confidence to trapped animal wariness. "You are making mistake. I have done nothing wrong. I am customer." "You're a messenger," Ryan said, "and the message is received. Now turn around, hands behind your head." For a moment the man hesitated, calculating odds, assessing threats. Then, seeing the absolute certainty in Ryan's eyes and the coiled readiness in Titan's posture, he complied. Ryan zip-tied his hands with practiced efficiency, then keyed his mic. "Target secured. come pick up your package." FBI agents swarmed through the door within seconds, weapons drawn, surrounding the man in a cocoon of tactical precision. They marched him out to a waiting vehicle while Torres entered, her expression a mixture of satisfaction and concern. "Good work, Commander. We've got eyes on 3 more vehicles circling the perimeter, definitely Sokolov's people." She looked at Lily, who stood behind the counter looking shell-shocked. "They know you're here. They're probing defenses, testing our response. The main assault will come soon." "How soon?" Ryan asked. "Best guess? Tonight. Dimitri knows we're here now, knows we're protecting her. He'll either back off or go all in." She paused. "My money's on all in. Men like Dimitri don't back down from challenges." Ryan nodded slowly, his tactical mind already running through scenarios. "Then we prepare for worst case. I need blueprints of the diner, the buildings on either side, and the sewer system underneath. If they're smart, they'll hit from multiple angles simultaneously, try to overwhelm our response." "You think they're that sophisticated?" "I think Dimitri has been running a criminal empire for 20 years. He didn't survive that long by being stupid." Ryan looked at Lily. "This is your last chance to walk away. We can put you on a plane to anywhere in the world, give you a new identity, set you up somewhere Dimitri will never find you." Lily met his eyes steadily. "And leave those other women to suffer? Leave Dimitri free to keep trafficking, keep hurting people?" She shook her head. "No, we finish this." Torres nodded with grim respect. "Then let's get to work. We have approximately 8 hours to prepare for a war." Night fell over Lake Ashwood like a shroud, bringing with it a cold wind that made the pines whisper secrets and the lake water slap against the shore with uneasy rhythms. The town's lights seemed dimmer than usual, as if the darkness itself had grown heavier, more oppressive. Inside the Timberline diner, Ryan stood at the window, watching his own reflection ghost over the night beyond. The diner was closed now, its usual patrons sent home with excuses about a plumbing emergency. The only people remaining were operators: Ryan, Lily, Titan, Torres, and a dozen FBI agents positioned in overlapping fields of fire throughout the building. They'd turned the diner into a fortress. The windows were reinforced with ballistic film. The entrances were covered by agents with automatic weapons. Hidden cameras gave them views of every approach. On paper, it was impregnable. But Ryan knew better than to trust paper. "They're here," Torres said, her voice crackling through the tactical comms. She was on the 2nd floor of the building next door, watching through infrared scopes. 6 vehicles, multiple contacts, approaching from all directions. This is it. Ryan looked at Lily, who sat at the counter with Titan pressed against her leg, her hand buried in the dog's fur like it was an anchor to reality. She looked terrified and determined in equal measure, and Ryan felt a surge of protective rage at the men who'd put that fear in her eyes. "Remember the plan," he said softly. "You stay behind the counter, behind cover. No matter what happens out here, you stay down until I tell you it's safe. And if something happens to you, then Titan will get you out through the back. He knows the route." Ryan knelt, bringing himself to eye level with her. "But nothing's going to happen to me. I've survived worse than this." "Promise?" Ryan never made promises he couldn't keep, but he made an exception. "I promise." The first explosion shattered the night, a flashbang grenade through the diner's front window, intended to blind and disorient. But Ryan had been expecting it, had his eyes closed and his body already moving when the blinding light and concussive sound washed over him. He came up behind the counter, weapon drawn as dark figures swarmed through the broken window. But they weren't entering an undefended space. They were entering a kill zone. FBI agents opened fire from concealed positions, their muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. The first wave of attackers went down hard, their body armor stopping lethal hits but not the kinetic force that threw them back against the walls. "North entrance breached," Torres's voice, sharp with urgency. "2 hostiles in the kitchen." Ryan was moving before she finished speaking, Titan at his heels. They burst through the kitchen door to find 2 men in tactical gear trying to flank through the back. Ryan dropped the first with 2 precisely placed shots to the chest. Center mass, professional, no wasted motion. The second turned his weapon toward Ryan, but Titan hit him low and hard, jaws clamping on the man's wrist, forcing the weapon up and away. Ryan closed the distance, delivered a precise strike to the man's temple with the butt of his pistol, and the attacker crumpled. "Kitchen secure," he reported into his mic. But the assault was far from over. Through the tactical radio, he heard the chatter of agents calling out new contacts, coordinating fire, requesting backup. This wasn't a hit squad. This was a full-scale military operation. "Commander," Torres's voice urgent. "We have a problem. They've got a van approaching the rear entrance. Looks like they're planning to breach with explosives. We can't get a clean shot." Ryan's tactical mind processed the information instantly. If they breached the rear with explosives while FBI agents were engaged at the front, they'd create chaos, split the defensive forces, allow attackers to flood in from multiple directions. It was a good plan. Dimitri's people were more professional than Ryan had expected, which meant he needed to counter with something they wouldn't expect. "Torres, keep your teams on the front breach. I'm going out the back. Commander, trust me." Ryan looked at Lily. "Stay down. Titan, guard." The dog immediately moved to position himself between Lily and any possible threat, his body language shifting into full protection mode. Then Ryan was moving, out the back door of the diner and into the darkness. The van was 50 yards away, its side door open, men preparing explosive charges. They didn't see him coming, a ghost in the night, moving with the silent lethality that had made SEALs legends. He closed to 20 yards before they spotted him. One man shouted a warning in Russian, raising his weapon, but Ryan was faster. His first 2 shots took out the men preparing the explosives. His next 3 shots shredded the van's tires, immobilizing it. Then he was on them. The fight was brutal and close, no room for weapons, just hand-to-hand combat in the dark alley behind the diner. Ryan moved through them like water through cracks, efficient, unstoppable, using their own momentum against them. A joint lock here, a precise strike there, exploiting weak points that 12 years of training had taught him to find instinctively. Within 30 seconds, 4 men were on the ground, unconscious or wounded. The 5th, the van's driver, tried to flee, but Ryan caught him, dragged him back, and secured him with zip ties. "Rear entrance secure," he reported, breathing hard. 5 hostiles neutralized, 1 package of C4 recovered. "Copy that, Commander. Front entrance is holding. I think—" The transmission cut off with a burst of static. Ryan's blood ran cold. He sprinted back toward the diner's front entrance, his weapon up, his heart hammering. If Torres's comms were down, it meant something had gone very wrong very fast. He rounded the corner and saw it. A black SUV had crashed through the FBI's perimeter, smashing through the barricades and disgorging men directly onto the diner's front steps. They were breaching, overwhelming the defenses through sheer audacity and force. And, leading them, Ryan saw through the chaos, was a man who could only be Dimitri Sokolov himself. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with his brother Victor's same cold eyes and a scar running from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from someone who'd tried and failed to kill him. He moved with absolute confidence, a general leading his troops into battle, convinced of his own invincibility. Ryan didn't give him time to enjoy that confidence. He hit Dimitri from the side, driving his shoulder into the man's ribs, taking him down to the pavement hard. They rolled, grappling, and Ryan found himself facing a man who actually knew how to fight. Not just brawling, but trained combat skills. Dimitri got a hand on Ryan's throat, squeezing, his grip like iron. "You should have minded your own business, SEAL," he hissed. "Now you die with the girl." Ryan's vision started to gray at the edges, but he'd been in chokeholds before, knew how to survive them. He drove his thumb into the pressure point behind Dimitri's ear, a precise strike that made the man's grip spasm open. They separated, both coming to their feet, circling. Around them, the battle raged. FBI agents engaging Dimitri's men, weapons fire echoing through the mountain night. "You can't win," Ryan said, his voice deadly calm. "Your operation is finished. Your men are being arrested or killed. You've lost." "I haven't lost until that witness is dead," Dimitri snarled. "And I always finish what I start." He pulled a knife, a wicked-looking blade with a serrated spine, and lunged. Ryan sidestepped, caught the knife arm, twisted, and applied a lock that should have disarmed any normal opponent. But Dimitri was strong and desperate, fighting through pain that would have incapacitated most men. They went down again, this time Ryan on his back, Dimitri above him, the knife descending toward his throat. And then 90 pounds of Belgian Malinois hit Dimitri from the side. Titan had abandoned his guard position, had sensed Ryan's danger, and had come to his partner's aid the way he'd done a dozen times in a dozen battles. His jaws clamped on Dimitri's knife arm, the pressure immense, forcing the weapon away. Dimitri screamed, trying to shake the dog off, but Titan held on with the tenacity that made his breed legendary. Ryan didn't waste the opening. He rolled, came to his feet, and delivered a brutal kick to Dimitri's ribs, precise enough to crack but not shatter. The man went down, the fight finally going out of him. Within seconds, FBI agents swarmed in, securing Dimitri with heavy restraints, reading him his rights in both English and Russian. The battle was over. Ryan stood in the wreckage of the Timberline diner, breathing hard, bleeding from a dozen minor cuts, and surveyed the scene. Dimitri's men were either in custody or down. The FBI agents were secure in the perimeter, and Lily. She emerged from behind the counter, her eyes wide with shock, but she was unharmed. She looked at Ryan, at Titan, at the chaos they'd prevented, and burst into tears. The aftermath of a battle is always strangely anticlimactic. The adrenaline drains away, leaving behind exhaustion, pain, and the surreal awareness that you're still alive when you probably shouldn't be. Ryan sat on the diner's front steps, an EMT working on a deep gash in his forearm while he watched the FBI process the scene. 15 of Dimitri's men were in custody, including the man himself. 3 more were being loaded into ambulances, wounded but alive. Not a single law enforcement casualty. By any measure, it was a complete success. Torres approached, looking tired but satisfied. "We've got enough evidence here to put Dimitri away for multiple life sentences. Plus, his phone had contacts for the entire trafficking network. Names, locations, photographs. The Sacramento field office is already coordinating raids. By morning, we'll have dismantled the whole organization." "And the women?" Ryan asked. "The ones still being held?" "Rescue operations are underway. Thanks to Ms. Chen's testimony and now this, we're bringing them home." Ryan nodded, feeling some of the weight lift from his shoulders. This was why he'd fought. Not for medals or recognition, but for this. The knowledge that innocence would sleep safely tonight because he'd stood in the gap. Lily sat down beside him, Titan immediately positioning himself at her feet, leaning his weight against her legs. She'd been checked out by the EMTs and declared physically fine, though the psychological trauma would take longer to heal. "It's really over?" she asked quietly. "It's really over," Ryan confirmed. "Dimitri's going to prison for the rest of his life. His organization is done. You're free, Lily. You can go anywhere, be anyone, live the life you choose." She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the lake where the first light of dawn was beginning to paint the water in shades of rose and gold. "I think," she said slowly, "I'd like to stay here. Lake Ashwood, it's a good town, good people, and—" She glanced at Ryan, her expression soft. "There are still people here worth fighting for." Ryan met her eyes and saw in them the future he'd been afraid to imagine. A life beyond the war, a purpose beyond the mission, a chance at the peace he'd been seeking. "Yeah," he said quietly, "there are." 3 weeks later, the Timberline Diner reopened with new windows, fresh paint, and a sign in the window that read, "Under New Management." Lily stood behind the counter, pouring coffee for the morning regulars, her smile genuine and reaching her eyes for the first time in months. Frank complained about his knee. Deputy Morrison shared bear stories. The contractors argued about lumber. Life had returned to its comfortable rhythms, but with new additions. Ryan had extended his leave indefinitely, a polite fiction that really meant he'd decided to take the Navy up on its offer of early retirement. 12 years was enough. He'd done his time, paid his dues, earned his rest, and he'd found something here worth staying for. He sat in the corner booth, his booth now, by unspoken agreement, with Titan at his feet, working on plans for the security consultant business he was starting. Former military and law enforcement, providing protection for witnesses, training for vulnerable populations, consulting for at-risk businesses, putting his skills to use without the war. Lily brought him coffee without asking, adding just the right amount of cream. Some things didn't need words. "Torres called," she said, sitting across from him. "They rescued 43 women from the Sokolov network. 43, Ryan. 43 lives saved because we stood up." "Because you stood up," Ryan corrected. "I just helped with the cleanup." She reached across the table and took his hand, her touch warm and steady. "We make a good team." "Yeah," Ryan agreed, looking at this woman who'd shown more courage than most soldiers, who'd faced her nightmares and won. "We really do." Titan, sensing the moment, placed his head on Lily's knee and gazed up at her with those knowing amber eyes. She scratched behind his ears and his tail thumped against the floor. "Good boy," she whispered. "Such a good, brave boy." Outside, Lake Ashwood sparkled in the morning sun, peaceful and beautiful. The mountains stood eternal watch. The world turned on its axis, carrying its mix of darkness and light, evil and good, wolves and sheep. But here, in this small corner of the world, the sheepdogs stood their watch, and the flock could rest easy. As the sun climbed higher, painting the diner in golden light, Ryan found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From the battlefields of distant wars to this quiet mountain town. From the violence he'd thought defined him to the peace he'd found protecting someone who needed it. His grandfather had been right. Being a sheepdog wasn't about seeking conflict. It was about standing ready when conflict found you. It was about using strength in the service of others, about protecting the vulnerable, not because duty demanded it, but because conscience required it. Lily had reminded him of that truth. She'd shown him that heroes didn't need combat training or military hardware. Sometimes heroism was just an ordinary person deciding that enough was enough, that truth mattered more than safety, that standing up was worth the risk. And she'd given him something he'd been missing for 12 years, a reason to fight that didn't end when the deployment was over, a mission that wouldn't stop with a ceasefire or a presidential order, a purpose that was personal, chosen, and deeply meaningful. He looked at her behind the counter, laughing at one of Frank's terrible jokes, her whole face transformed by joy. She'd survived her battle and emerged stronger, ready to rebuild, to help others, to live fully despite the scars she carried. She was, in the truest sense, a warrior. And Titan, lying at Ryan's feet, his battle days behind him but his protective instincts as strong as ever, had found his own peace. No more explosions to sniff out, no more hostile buildings to clear, just a warm diner, good food, and people worth protecting. They'd all earned their rest, but more than that, they'd earned each other. As the morning rush began to fill the diner, Ryan pulled out his phone and typed a message to his former team leader. "Found my reason to stay. Not coming back. Fair winds and following seas, brother." The response came 30 seconds later. "About damn time, Commander. Live well. You've earned it." Ryan pocketed the phone, drained his coffee, and stood to leave. He had blueprints to review, security systems to design, a business to build. But first, he had a date with a lake, a fishing rod, and a dog who deserved to spend a peaceful afternoon doing absolutely nothing. As he walked toward the door, Lily called out, "See you for dinner?" Ryan turned, meeting her smile with one of his own. Wouldn't miss it. Outside, the mountain air was clean and cold, filled with the scent of pine and possibility. Titan trotted ahead, his tail high, leading the way toward whatever came next. And for the first time in 12 years, Ryan McKenna walked into his future without the weight of war on his shoulders. Just a man, a dog, and the quiet knowledge that sometimes the greatest battles weren't fought overseas in the name of nations, but right here at home in the name of one person who needed saving. And that was enough. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes still exist. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments. What was your favorite moment? Was it Titan's loyalty, Ryan's protection, or the moment justice was served? We read every comment. God bless.